The game is Maxi Bourse. Here's the board. It's kind of a round Monopoly-ish board. You roll your dice and move on it. And take effects based on what you land on. However, it plays very, very differently from a Monopoly type game in a lot of ways. I've played this once. A member of our group had it. I thought it was really, really interesting. Both myself and one of the other players really, really liked it and wanted to try it again because we saw things that were so broken in it. Well, not absolutely certain we played it completely correctly. But there were intriguing factors of it which basically made stocks could be it's a stock market game, but a stock market game in a level that most stock market games aren't. Most, you're an investor. In this, you're a power in the world, in the finance world, or in the world of multiple industries or whatever. And your goal in this is to gain control of either 3 corporations in one sector of the economy, a sector being one of the colors represented here. So for example, British Airways and Club Med are both in the hospitality industry, essentially, or leisure industry. Whereas here we'll see Shell and Mobil, both classic oil companies. So you're playing with big, well-known companies for the most part, although they're international, so some of them aren't absolutely recognizable, depending on your nation. For example, as an American, I don't know what Alpha Aquitaine is. Obviously, it's an oil company, but it's a cool name. What do we have here? Actually, I think it's ELF Aquitaine, but right. So one of your goals is to get 3 corporations total control, and control is expressed by having 6 shares in that corporation. Another would be, and those 3 would be in the same industry group. Another would be to have control of 5 different corporations in differing industry groups. And that sounds massive until you start looking at the number of different groups and corporations there are. And it's quite an extensive amount. So it seems possible to do without actually having to bankrupt people. All right, so what was so cool about the game was prices really are determined through a mechanism that strongly reflects if somebody's willing to pay for it, the price is going to go up. And if nobody's willing to pay for it, the price probably is not, it's going to go down significantly if none of these big players are willing to pay. I think that drop is indicative of the fact that if somebody's releasing, a large block of shares in this corporation and none of the big players are willing to take a risk on it, the smaller investors are not as willing. Now this is from a different era, the era of corporate rating, and it reflects that. And you'll see some of the companies, things like TWA, that are just gone. They got absorbed or fell apart. So it's kind of an interesting slice of history from a time when exactly the type of maneuvers that the game is representing were being conducted, and when it looked like maybe there would be these global conglomerates. And to some extent there are, but often they break apart. They're not really the sign of power that they once were, or that they were thought to be at various times. For money, you get some cash, some little paper money, very, very flimsy. That each player gets 6 of each bill. No indication how much that is. This can hold as many players as you like because of the mechanisms of the game. Of course, some people will be dropping out very quickly if there's a lot of people because of the way the competition works. Okay, so let's go over the rules a little bit because I think they're kind of vital to this whole thing. Yeah. So here's the setup. Everybody gets the 6 bills and they start on the board. You roll to see who goes first, and then they're going to roll dice and move along the track. And they move along the track going around, and then they come here and they drop down and go around and drop down. And when they hit here, they go back to the start. It's just a more compact way of representing than a huge square, say. Okay. On your turn, the first thing you get to do is either make a sale or trade stocks. Now, when you want to sell stock, and I'll explain the stock exchange in general, which is this marker here, and there's starting prices on here, but those prices are very, very flexible. When you sell stock, you sell it by the same market mechanisms that you will by buying stock in general. So we'll touch on selling later. You could also trade stock with other players, and that can be any kind of trade you like as long as it only involves stock certificates. You can't hand them money. You could make promises, but those are worth the air they're carried on. Okay. And let's go into that meat, the stock exchange itself. So, in general, you trigger off buying stock by landing on a space. That space has a company name on it. You have a special opportunity to buy stock of that company, which is to say you can buy up to 3,000 we'll say 3 certificates for up to, for the cost that's listed on the board in cash. If you don't want to do that, you can buy from any other company up to 3 shares, but you have to play the market with everyone else. If you do buy the 3 shares that you've got a bonus chance to buy, the market still is open for that corporation and any unsold shares that are sitting in the bank. Now, what does it mean that the market's open? Well, the price you pay if you landed is the price that's listed in this white box, or if that hasn't been filled, the starting value. That's per certificate. But if the market is open on something, then everybody who's involved in that purchasing indicates how many shares, and is this done? Yeah. In turn, indicates how many up to 3,000 shares they want to buy, or 3 certificates. If you pass, you're out of the bidding and you're fine. If, however, you want to buy some shares, then a couple of things are taken into account. One, are there enough shares to handle that many people, that many bids? But before we do that, whether or not there are enough, we have to affect the market price by the bidding that just happened. Okay, so however many certificates have been bid, that increases the current market price by $10. So let's say Blue starts things off, and he's going to lands on L'Oreal, good roll of a 2. Buys his 3 shares of L'Oreal. There's now 7 shares left. Let's say each of the remaining players, and there's 5 of them, commits to buying 3 of those 7 shares. Well, then the price goes up $150 on the thing. Now we got a problem. We're overcommitted for purchases. The way overcommitting works is that certificates are offered for $10 higher, and $10 higher, and $10 higher, until someone drops out, or someone's. Now this is where things get tricky. Only one player drops out at a time, and that's done in turn order, or turn order from the position. Which is to say, if you're sitting here, you can drop out before this guy has an option to. If you drop out, and now there are enough shares for everyone to get what they want, then they have to pay that price. And if they can't afford it, they get penalized heavily, and they have a good chance of being knocked out of the game, or effectively knocked out of the game in terms of the number of shares they're going to lose. So you can't bid more shares than are available. You can't say, I'll buy 3,000 if only 1,000 is available. But everybody can say, I'll take that one last share, and the price could go up astronomically. Now, the danger with this was two players could essentially drive a price up tremendously by neither of them agreeing to drop out. And now, what's the disadvantage of this? Well, you could pay a lot for that one share, but you've just valued all your other shares and driven their value way up. Does that matter? Well, maybe not. And that was one of the issues here. Okay. So I think we kind of have an idea how the market's going to work, and I'll try to handle this as we're playing. So then there's a second round of the same thing if there are still certificates left in the corporation. And everyone, including the person who made the initial purchase, whether it was at the market price or at the fixed price because they got a bonus on it, is involved in the second round now. And it does the same thing. The price doesn't go down if nobody wants them. As long as people want them, the price is going to go up. Now, if you're holding shares, remember at the beginning of your turn, you're allowed to sell them. And that again goes by the market. The way that happens is you declare how many, and they all have to be of one company, shares that you're selling. And then each player indicates in order well, you have to announce how many you're selling in the first round, and each player in order can bid at the market price to indicate that they want them. You can't do this to your own. If there aren't enough shares to satisfy all buyers, again, the price goes up by $10 each until somebody drops out. So by selling shares, you can increase their value too if they're of interest to people. However, if they're not of interest to people, then each person who declines to buy causes a drop of $10. So this happens even if some people are willing to buy and others aren't. So you're probably not going to get the full market value for the certificates that you're selling, no matter what, because some people are going to bow out of it. It's unlikely that you have something so valuable that every single player at the table wants it. So you want to shoot the price up before you sell it, because it's going to drop some no matter what. And then you do this in 2 rounds. And if there's still stocks left at the end of the second round, each unsold share that you declared you wanted to sell causes the price of all those shares to drop by $10 each. So again, buying someone's garbage may be a kind of questionable idea. Now, once that happens, the bank buys the shares at their very reduced price back from the player. So you can see, if you don't really want a share that somebody's selling, you want to let them lose money on it, lose value on it, because its price is going to go down, and you might be able to get it more easily at that lower price, where it's an opportunity. However, if you really do want a share, if it's going to help you towards one of your victory conditions, and those victory conditions help you, working towards those victory conditions helps you when you hit start, then clearly you're willing to pay a premium on it, and you may be willing to pay close to market price. Okay. There's event and rumor cards. If you land on the spaces marked for them, you draw a card. If it's an event, it just takes place immediately. If it's a rumor, you get to hold it in your hand and play it anytime you like, and that can affect prices. And that can be a problem if somebody has to raise cash, for example. If you run out of cash, bad things happen. For example, if you committed to buy too many shares of stock, or if an event or something causes you to sell shares. If this happens, what happens here? You must sell stock to generate cash, and you have to keep trying to sell your shares until you get enough cash together to pay your required payment. If it's because of a stock commitment that you didn't make, or that you didn't have the cash on hand for, then not only do you have to raise the cash and pay for it, but you pay a $100,000 fine for the amount of time it took you to raise the money. That's a $100 bill. Everything's in thousands here. Okay, if you sell your entire portfolio off and you still can't afford it, the bank seizes the stock you were trying to buy and puts it up for sale, and you might get some money back for that. And so you might be back in the game with very little left, which would kind of suck. If, on the other hand, you run completely out of money, if you can't be covered even by the bank sale, well, you end up out of the game. Corporations can go bankrupt if their stock value drops to zero. At that point, the corporation is removed from the game, all money invested in it is lost, and you can't get any bonuses off those certificates. They're just gone. Okay. Now, every time you go around the board, you get bonuses. You get a dividend of 10, the lowest money income, for each share that you own. That's just for being an investor. You get a director's fee for each corporation you control. You have to have 6 shares or more to control the corporation, but if you do outright control it, you get the current value of the shares in cash. That's kind of cool. You can also make additional profits through specialization and diversification. If you control a corporation and have stock in 3 corporations, okay, let me rephrase that. If you have stock in 3 corporations of the same sector, so for example, let's say you have IBM, Hewlett-Packard, and Apple, which is up here, and you control one of those, you get a bonus 300. Okay? Diversification, if you control 3 companies in different industries, you get a bonus of 600. These bonuses all add up, and so for example, though, you don't combine those 3 companies in different things. That's just a marker indicating you're getting closer to winning in a sense, because you don't make like as many combinations as you can possibly do. If you cheated, you have to pay a fine. And no, you're not supposed to be allowed to cheat. It's just if you accidentally do. Okay, and we went over the victory already. 3 corporations, all controlled, all in the same industry. Or 5 corporations in different industries, all under your control. And again, control 6 shares. Some options for the game. And then a lot of historical and information on the companies themselves. The options, we may have played with one of these and this may have been the issue. Playing until you start a set number of time, the richest player wins, because they kind of artificially make things where you're not going for these corporations anymore and you start driving the prices up, and that's all you care about, and I don't think that works well. There's a long game where you're trying to knock everyone out of the game, and again, if that's all you're trying to do, it makes the conglomerates, etc., less of an important aspect. I think only the game as written really makes a lot of sense. There's a very junior version, which is tiny, and then some other, a senior one twice around the 2 outer rings. Some options that allow you to start with certificates at the beginning of the game, kind of like deal out all the property in Monopoly or something. None of these strike me as adding to the game. Some of them strike me as possibly very much damaging the game. I think we played the short version and we saw, what the hell are we trying to do? We're just playing with the values here. The stock market does not work well here without the victory conditions for the basic game, I feel. All right. Well, I'm going to play the basic game, and if you're interested, you can watch it. I guess this is going up.